Sure.
Hey, man. Oh, yeah.
Just put it on mute so it doesn't ring.
Twice in a week. The short straw. Yes, clear around some long. Figure it out. He's not gonna come, one of us jumps in. No.
Are you counting 30 people? Okay. You probably move the community development people and parks for now because we kind of need the finance people. And the planning and development. This is like redistricting. I'm like, now I'm an expert at pulling people.
Good evening. Welcome to the Douglasville Legislative Work Session for January 13th, 2022. I'm Mayor Pro Tem Terry Miller. And to begin this evening, I call this to order. And our first order of business will be the invocation by Ms. Emily Hardway, our Community Outreach Coordinator, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Mark Adams. Please rise.
Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for this beautiful day you've given us. We come before you now and we ask that you grant Mayor Pro Tem and Council wisdom as they work together to make decisions affecting our city. We ask that with the winter weather coming this weekend, you will keep our citizens, first responders, and public services employees safe as they travel out on the roads. As we enter into a long holiday weekend honoring a man who was your devoted servant, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we ask that you humble us and remind us to love and treat others as you would treat them, for we are all your children. I pray that this holiday weekend be one of rest and rejuvenation for our council, our staff, and all our citizens. Thank you for the continued blessings in our lives. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Adams, for the pledge, and thank you, Ms. Hardaway, for the invocation. Before we proceed tonight, I will read the protocol for our legislative work session. As I said, welcome to the City of Douglasville's legislative work session for January 13th, 2022. This is a work session where agenda items are presented for discussion and no official action will be taken tonight. Official action will be taken on the items discussed tonight on Tuesday, not Monday, that being the holiday, on Tuesday, January the 18th at 6 p.m. If the business you are here for is not listed as an agenda item, there will be ample time under the agenda item comments from citizens and delegates section to discuss your business. A few of the protocol items that you need to be made aware of before we start, and please listen so that there's no misunderstandings as to how tonight's meeting will be conducted. You will please keep your comments and presentation on a professional level, dealing with the facts that are important to this governing body to make their decision. We will not accept comments that are considered by the chair to be a personal attack on any individual or group of individuals. You will receive a warning from the chair if you deviate from this requirement. The second deviation will result in a request that you leave the chambers and premises for the evening. Only one person will be talking at a time. Please do not applaud or react to speakers. Speak from the audience, cheer, carry on a conversation with others in the audience, or disrupt the order of this meeting in any way. You'll be reminded that we are only required to accept public comment during required public hearings. We are not required to accept public comment on any other items before this council. We accept public comments on all items because it enables us to make better decisions, but we will maintain order during the meeting. As the chair, at any time during this meeting, I'm prepared to stop public comment on any agenda item if we believe the general good of the meeting does not benefit from the actions being taken by a member or members of the audience. If you have a pager, does anybody have a pager anymore? If you have a pager, cell phone, or any type of electronic device, please power them off or put them into silent mode at this time. Agenda items will be handled as follows. The committee chairperson will read the agenda item, then the person representing the agenda item or the applicant will make his or her presentation first. And that will be the only opportunity for you to present information. Then the mayor and council will possibly ask questions of the applicant or seek additional information. After that, the committee chair will ask for comments or statements from the audience. There's a maximum time limit of 20 minutes for those to speak in favor or in opposition each of the agenda item. The applicant's presentation is included in this time allotment. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes. Please fill out one of the speaker sign-in cards on the table outside of the room. Or if, are we doing anything online today? No, okay, no, nobody's online, okay. Prior to approaching the podium, please give your card to the city deputy or city clerk. At the podium, state your name and address for the record, whether you're in favor or against the item, and then proceed with comments. If you are a minor, please do not give your address. Each person has one opportunity to comment on each agenda item. No reappearances. If you think of something later or forgot, did not say initially. Sorry. This meeting is not a question and answer format. The meeting is not a debate format, but a format that gives you an opportunity to make public comment on the respective agenda item. Please address your comments to the chair, not to the members of the audience or to the applicant or city staff. If your information is repetitive of information presented earlier in the meeting or any other meetings on this matter, there's no need to present the same information again. If it is repetitive, you will be reminded then requested to move on to any new information that you're prepared to present. Our policy requires that printed information used for review be submitted in advance to the city clerk's office to be included in each council member's work packet. Therefore, please do not pass out or distribute additional information to the council, even included during the citizens' comment period. If there are any questions or anybody has anything, I don't know if you'd have a question about any of that, then we will move on to our first agenda item. And that is the first committee, which will be Economic Development Committee, and I will ask that the ranking member, Mark Adams, take that committee, please.
It appears, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, that we have no business tonight under economic development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next committee is the Finance Committee, and that also goes back to you, Councilman Adams.
Thank you, sir. We have 3 items tonight to discuss under finance. The first is to adopt an ordinance to amend the City of Douglasville's fiscal year 2021-22 SPLOST fund budget. Ms. Karin Callan and Mr. Shane Byrd are going to inform us of that information. Go ahead, Mr. Byrd.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Shane Byrd, Finance Department, 6695 Church Street. This evening, I'm presenting our SPLOST budget amendment number 12 for the 2016 SPLOST fund. One thing I want to highlight before we get into that, what makes up that amendment, is we are adjusting the revenues for this SPLOST based on updated sales tax projections from December 31st, 2021. We're going to be adding an additional $363,000 to the SPLOST, which is then distributed out to the various categories in the SPLOST, which goes into each category's contingency. That contingency then is reduced or increased based on different projects' budgets. So that being said, going into Category 1 for public safety projects, we have a net change of $66,000. That includes an increase for a second radio tower site final lease payment to the total amount of $440,000, followed by a $200 decrease for public safety equipment. This is essentially to finalize that project's budget because it is complete. The same goes for that second radio tower site. We are completely done with that radio tower. This is just finalizing the budget and cleaning it up. In Category 2, under facilities, we have a $50,000 net change. That encompasses an increase for $100,000 for City Hall concept plans, where we are doing concept and designs for a City Hall, as well as $292,000 for the roof replacement at the City Hall. So we, a few years back, did the round portion of the roof. This is essentially taking care of the flat portion of that roof. And this is all part of those additional sales tax proceeds that we are able to then do some of these small projects as a part of the SPLOST. Going into transportation, we have a negative $22,000 net change. Just to go over Section A there under Section 3, we have a $250,000 decrease for various projects that actually came in under budget, and that detail is listed there in the memo supplemented. We also have a handful of projects where we had contracted out the work or we're in process, we finalized the budgets. This is essentially wrapping up those budgets and tying them out. So that includes the 2017 through the 22 LMIGs, which are resurfacing projects for various cities, streets across the city. And lastly, there in transportation, we have a $19,000 increase for the New Horizons redevelopment plan. That's essentially closing out the project budget. Again, another item just to clean up the budget so that way we can finalize it. In Parks and Recreation, under Category 4, we have a $96,000 net change. This encompasses a $65,000 increase for the Willing Workers Park renovation project budget, where we are just finalizing some change orders we received from the contractor and tying out that budget as we now approach towards the end of that project itself. The next one is a $48,000 increase for the Club Drive maintenance facility renovation project that is now complete. We are, as many other projects in this amendment, it's to close out the project budget now that that project is actually complete and there will be no further expenditure activity. And then lastly, there in Parks and Rec, we have a $250,000 increase for a West Pines maintenance building project. This is part of that contingency in Parks and Recreation SPLOST, where we had some additional SPLOST proceeds come in, and we were able to allocate the remainder of SPLOST contingency to this additional project here out of SPLOST Parks and Recreation, and that is $250,000. The last category for this amendment is an adoption of $172,000 for bank and related arbitrage fees. We are now entering in the final year of our SPLOST from 2016. It's a 6-year program that started collections in April of 2017, and it will go through April of 2023. We're now getting close to that final year, and these are related arbitrage fees that we are aware of coming into the end of SPLOST. All that to say, we have a total adjustment of $363,000, and that encompasses a total adjusted revenues and expenditures of $45,112,353. I do want to highlight that part of that $45 million includes the general fund and sanitation fund transfers, where some of our unreserved fund balance from general fund and the sanitation fund were able to help fund some facilities projects for the 2 maintenance facilities that were brought back online or brought online. All that to say, one of the questions that I'm frequently asked is, what does our SPLOST look like in total revenues? This current estimates is a $39 million SPLOST, which is roughly $2 million higher than the initial projected SPLOST of $37 million. So we always try to budget conservatively, but as we are now entering in that final year of SPLOST, we're going to continuously evaluate, and if sales tax proceeds continue to come in higher than we had originally budgeted, we'll bring back amendments with the hope that we are actually adding more to this SPLOST, which is fantastic. We're able to then do some more projects. Oftentimes, something I do want to highlight is as we do get additional sales tax, we do have to distribute that out evenly across the referendum items that the voters had voted on. So each category of SPLOST has a percentage. Parks and Rec is 20%, Public Safety is 20%, Facilities is 15%, and Transportation is 45%. So this 363 is distributed up across those percentages based on what the voters had come to the ballots for.
And what does that do, Mr. Byrd? I know you mentioned in our committee's meeting earlier that there was a net decrease in the amount of money we had to use out of general fund because of these increases. What was that amount, roughly $500,000, is that right?
That's about correct, about $500,000. And that's one of the great things about this SPLOST program is we're able to do a lot of these projects, these capital investment projects, using these SPLOST proceeds. And as sales tax continues to come in, we're able to toss that back into contingency across the SPLOST and then dedicate that money towards specific projects, say in Parks and Recreation, Public Safety, Transportation, and Facilities.
That's great. I appreciate that. I'll open the floor for any comment, and I'll have a couple myself. Anyone have any comment or question? Okay. A couple of things. I did do just a walk by on the Club Drive facility, maintenance facility a few days ago, and it looked really good. It looked as though we were finished and up and running with that. And also this $250,000 increase for the West Pines Maintenance Building project. I had mentioned in our committee's meetings that Mr. Cartwright was going to be here on Tuesday to expound upon that as far as giving us a little more insight as to what was going on. But Mr. Bass is here tonight. Mr. Bass, did you want to make comments so that we'd have more time, I guess, to let that soak in between now and Tuesday?
Yes, sir. Chris Bass, 8830 Gurley Road. Just to give you a brief overview of this project. First, it allows us to check off one of our recommendations from our master plan that was developed in 2018. Entering into that 24 to 60-month phase, it allows us to replace the existing maintenance building that was built in 1960. It served as the old clubhouse for the golf course. It's simply eliminating that facility, building a new prefabricated building on top of the existing slab, and allowing us to be able to store equipment that's specific to West Pines operations at that facility. We'll have increased security at that particular location, and then everything else will be operated at our Club Drive location.
That's great. Thank you for that. We appreciate that preview. You know, in the face of everything we've been through the last year with COVID and the challenges that it has presented to the city, our golf course is one thing that has really shown a bright light as far as increased revenues. I know there have been records set in rounds played and revenue, and I understand we're headed toward another one. That's great news. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, Mr. Bass. I appreciate it. Any other comment or question on this item? We plan to take it up on Tuesday to vote on it. Okay. We'll move on then to item B. Adopt an ordinance to amend the City of Douglasville's fiscal year 2021-22 general fund budget, and Ms. Karin Callan is going to help us with that.
Yes, thank you. Karin Callan, Finance Director, 6695 Church Street. This is our second budget amendment this fiscal year for the general fund. Shane just went over the SPLOST fund. This is the general fund. For revenues, we were very conservative in our revenues projections this year, so we're able to increase our building and permit revenues by $550,000. As mentioned earlier, the golf course is doing really well, so we are adjusting that budget by $70,000 revenue increase there. And film production revenue, we didn't budget for any film production this year, but we've received about $17,000 so far. So with those additional revenues, we're able to reduce the amount that we had programmed in to use of our fund balance. We started out budgeting 1.2 million, roughly $1.2 million, and we're reducing that amount by $508,000 to $710,000 is so far is what we're programmed in to use this fiscal year. So we're able to reduce that by $500,000. The expenses that we are adjusting are 3 additional staff members in the engineering department. We have the increase in our fuel expenses. As we know, fuel costs have gone up since we started our original budget projections for this fiscal year. We're unable, due to COVID, we're unable to get trustee guards in our maintenance department, so we're reducing those expenses there. And then we have increased cost for West Pines and food and beverage, inventory, and then additional $10,000 for zoning and advertising signs. Any other questions on the general fund budget amendment?
Thank you, Ms. Callan. Let me apologize to you and Mr. Byrd. I had that confused, that $500,000 savings. I'm sorry. I had that confused. It's actually out of the general fund and not the SPLOST fund. I apologize. Questions, comments? It's all good news. We appreciate all the hard work that you all do. And if there are no other questions or concerns about it, we'll take this up on Tuesday. I just don't feel as though we need to place it on the consent agenda when we are short. The numbers that we're short, okay? Thank you, Ms. Callan, appreciate it. We have one other item under finance tonight. Authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with Croy Engineering, LLC to provide for professional and consulting services for specific residential multimodal projects for Ward Number 1. Ms. April McKown.
April McKown, 6701 Church Street Project Manager. So what you have in front of you is the Croy Engineering contract, which resulted from the multimodal evaluation RFP, and then supplementally going and requesting additional proposals due to a lack of bids received from the RFP initially. So you do have in front of you the selection criteria that we followed in order to select and make that recommendation to mayor and council, and then you have the recommendation from staff members choosing Croy Engineering as the recommended firm to receive the bid. The total lump sum cost for the project is $70,360, and it will encompass Ward 1, so essentially that's of course Arbor Station and all of the residential streets within that ward, and we'll be looking at evaluating those streets to further understand where we can place sidewalks and bicycle facilities.
Thank you, Ms. McKown. Questions, comments? I know we discussed this in our committee meeting, and I have a question for Ms. McKown when we finish. I failed to ask in committees. Any question or comment concerning this? I know Ward 1 Representative Mr. Miller is very happy about this moving forward. Ms. McKown, were the 2 companies that actually did give us proposals, were they were initially included in the RFP? Is there any reason, was there any question as to why they did not voluntarily participate in that at the time?
So from what I understand, they were just, they missed it. That's what was told to me. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We had 5 firms that we reached out to as a result of not receiving any bids that we've worked with in the past, and all of them had opened it up through bidnet.com, which is our bid site, and unfortunately they did not bid. It was not lack of understanding. It was not anything to do with that, or not substantial enough, but it was just the lack of knowledge that they needed to bid. Basically.
That would have been my next question. Was there something in the RFP that was misleading or confusing? And I mean, we do a lot of these, so.
No, sir. I will say it is a small-scale project, with it being only $70,000. Typically, the firms that we contract with look at about $200,000 and above. So with us just selecting 1 ward, it is going to be a smaller-scale project, thus less income for them.
Sure. Okay, thank you. If there are no other comments or questions, then we will take that up on Tuesday for a vote. We thank you for your help. And Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, that's all that we have tonight under finance.
Thank you, Councilman Adams. Our next committee is Housing and Community Affairs, and I will have the vice chair of that committee, Councilman Adams, take that as well.
We have no business tonight under Housing and Community Affairs. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next committee is Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee, and that is chaired by Councilman Sam Davis.
Yes, table from January 10, 2022, adopt an ordinance to amend the charter of the City of Douglasville to revise its corporate limits and ward maps based on the 2020 U.S. Decennial census first enactment, and I'll make a motion to remove from the table number 21-595.
We're not taking action tonight, so that'll be on Tuesday. We're just discussing it then.
I'm discussing,
Yeah.
okay, Ms. Woodward?
Thank you, Councilman Davis. This item was discussed on Monday, and between now and Monday, we have had city staff has had the opportunity to show each council member their ward maps at the street level view and receive comments and remarks from council members and the mayor. So this map that you have in a hard copy of in front of you, this will be the fourth version or fourth iteration of the proposed ward map. Please bear in mind that city staff was constrained by the shape of census tracts and blocks, and we tried very hard to keep neighborhoods and subdivision together. And consider community interest and the history of the community. And also, above all else, we were trying very hard to balance the population to get each ward as close as possible to the ideal population. For wards with one representative, that number is 4,950. For super wards, that number, the ideal population number is 9,900. Now, compared to your current ward boundaries and working on the map from the north part of the map, which is Ward 3, what city staff is proposing to do is, in order to balance the population in Ward 3, city staff has proposed to draw the section that's east of James Vance Street, that includes Ellis Street and Huey Road, and I believe that area is also known as the Rock Hill Garden subdivision. City staff is proposing to draw that part into Ward 2 and also the west of South Flat Rock Road into Ward 2. So if you will, it's kind of like the bookends of Ward 3, drawing that into Ward 2 to have a more balanced population. And to further balance the population in Ward 2, the city staff looked at the Concourse Parkway area. And that area currently is split between Ward 2 and Ward 1. City staff is proposing to draw all of that area into Ward 2. And this area consists of commercial parcels and residential area. I think it's 2 apartment complexes in the Gurley Road, Bright Star Connector, and Highway 5 triangle. And additionally, if you move closer to the center of your map, city staff is proposing to draw the Slater Mill subdivision and a couple of parcels ending at Little Aniwaki Creek from Ward 2 to Ward 1. Now, moving further down the map, to balance the population in Ward 1 and Ward 4, city staff is proposing to draw the area between Timber Ridge Drive and north of Presley Mill Road and west of Little Aniwaki Creek into Ward 1. This area would include, I believe it's the Technical College, Brighton Academy, First Baptist Church, an undeveloped strip along Timber Ridge Road or Timber Ridge Drive, Kensington Gardens subdivision, Timber Ridge Estates subdivision, Presley Park subdivision, and Presley Place from Ward 4 to Ward 1. Last but not least, to balance the population in Ward 5, city staff has proposed to draw the villas at West Ridge apartment complex into Ward 5 from Ward 2. And all of these changes are compared to your current ward. City staff, if you all do not have further comments, then city staff will be able to prepare a physical copy of map of the proposed wards and your each new individual ward maps that you can view at the street level on Tuesday before the council meeting. If you have any questions or further comments, I will be happy to take that right now.
Okay, any questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
No questions at this time, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Ms. Lynn. We'll act on this on Monday. That's all I have, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving along, we have the next committee is Personnel and Organization Committee, chaired by Councilman Chris Watts.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor, item A is adopt an ordinance to extend the original employee vaccination incentive program created by ORD-2021-43 to continue to incentivize employees to receive COVID vaccines and booster shots, and to authorize the appropriation of an additional $76,701 from the American Rescue Plan Act funds for this extended program. Ms. Alston Bing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. T.L. Alston Bing, 6695 Church Street, Human Resources. This item before you is a recommendation to extend our initial COVID-19 vaccination program that we adopted back in October. Just to recap, that program was a voluntary program for employee participation that provided our full-time and part-time employees an incentive of $500 and $250 respectively for full-time and part-time employees if they had received their full dosage of one of the two vaccines. This extended program would allow us to begin the program again for 2022, beginning February 1st through September 30th of 2022. Employees that have already received this incentive for the program will not be eligible. This will be for employees that are not currently vaccinated. We have about 30% of our employee population that is not vaccinated at the time. The initial program, we saw that we had about 150 employees that were already vaccinated when we started the program, and about an additional 50 employees that got vaccinated with the incentive program. So we are hoping to move that needle, and that 30% of employees that are not vaccinated will be able to take advantage. The difference between the initial program and this extended program is that we are now offering an incentive for the booster. That incentive would be $250 for full-time employees and $125 for part-time employees. And staff recommends that we move forward with an extended program. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Alston Bing. We discussed this in committees tonight. Do we have any questions or comments at this time? Councilman Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just don't recall, Ms. Bean, us talking about and this is just something maybe I missed in committees about the booster, because I was going to ask, was there a way then if you had the two shots and you had been paid the incentive, then you can go back now and having had the booster, can get an additional $250 a full-time employee?
Yes, sir. We did mention this in committees, and if our employees have received their booster at this point in time when the program initiates, they would be able to receive that incentive.
Okay.
Yes,
so
sir.
what would that total amount of revenue be to them? Would it be $750 if they had received both shots and the booster?
Yes, that's correct, and these funds are covered by ARPA funds.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Thank
you, Mr. Chairman. Anyone, Councilman Davis, did you have something?
Yes, I have just a little something. So how we go about notifying and letting everybody know, because during the holidays, a couple of the officers missed out. They were so busy, so.
Yes, sir. So we will put out a communication to all city staff users from Human Resources with the guidelines and with the consent form. Also to mention that these employees that have not taken advantage of the vaccine will have to provide proof of the vaccine, and employees that have their booster shots will also have to provide to provide proof of the booster shot to Human Resources. So we will have signed acknowledgement on all.
And what days will they be offering the shots at our clinic?
I explained to the city manager earlier today, we are working with Care Here, our wellness clinic staff provider, in addition to Department of Public Health to incentivize this through an on-site event. So we're currently working on that. We will have more information on that to bring forward to you. But those orders are in for both additional vaccine and boosters, and we just met about that today with our Care Here corporate staff.
And one more time, when do it start?
February 1st, 2022, September 30th.
And when do it end?
September 30th, 2022.
All your listeners out there, let's listen up. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilman Davis. Any other comments or? Okay, thank you, Ms. Alston Bing. This particular item, I don't have a problem asking to place this on a consent agenda. If any.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right, that's what I was thinking. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. That's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Our next committee is Planning and Development Committee, and that is chaired by Councilman Mark Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. We have several items tonight under Planning and Development. I'm going to take the liberty simply because I know that potentially item A may be one that we have a lengthy discussion on. I know we have several people here that may want to speak concerning that. So I'm going to go to item B and C and D first, just so we can potentially have those that are here for those items possibly to not sit through the longer potential one and clear the room of some of the people. So I'm going to start on item B. Consider request for revised plat approval for the purpose of combining 3 lots into 1 lot for 22.147 acres at 1330, 1340, and 1346 Mount Vernon Road, located land lot 715, District 18, Section 2, parcels 5, 8, and 15, with parcel ID numbers 0715182005, 0715182008, and 0715182015. Application by Matthew Irwin. Mr. Ryan Anderson is going to tell us about that application.
Okay, Ryan Anderson, 6701 Church Street. The applicant is requesting revised final plat approval for the purpose of combining 3 lots into 1 at 1330, 1340, and 1346 Mount Vernon Road for the purpose of facilitating the development of a warehouse. This request is associated with a previous successful rezoning by the applicant. The property was rezoned from PUD to LI for the purpose of a 300,000 square foot warehouse development in March of 2021.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Just to bring everyone up to speed or remind us, this is the piece of property on the corner of Lynch Road and Mount Vernon Road that was combined, and we have gone through the rezoning process, and they now are ready to begin development, I understand, but they have to have 1 parcel so that it's not developed over 3 separate parcels. It has to become 1. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Questions, comments? Is there anyone here tonight from a representative from Mr. Irwin? Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this? I just want to make sure we give everyone opportunity. Okay. Seeing none, then.
I want to clarify.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just nothing in the original development plan has changed at all.
No.
Just wanted that on record, that it's exactly the same proposal that we had already approved.
Yes, sir.
So no amendments to that portion of this. Okay.
Others? Questions, comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. We will go forward then on that on Tuesday concerning that item. Item C, consider a request for revised final plat for Emblem Riverside for the purpose of a lot line revision for 9.636 acres at 1551 Riverside Parkway, located in land lot 176 and 177, District 1, Section 5, Parcel 1. Application by Ray Crocker, LMC Riverside Holdings, LLC. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, Ryan Anderson, 6701 Church Street. Let me give a little background on this. The owners of the property are requesting a revision to the subdivision property line between parcels 53 and parcel 1 for the purpose of developing Phase 2 to the Emblem Riverside residential community. Phase 1 was formerly known, well, when it was approved, it was known as the Riverside Preserve, and council approved the change of conditions to the PRD site plan back in December 2020. And Phase 1 is currently under construction. On 5/11/2021, parcel 53 was subdivided for business purposes to allow both Phase 1 and Phase 2 of Emblem Riverside to be financed and constructed in separate phases. At the time the subdivision was approved, the Phase 2 planning had not commenced, so the lot was placed in an approximate location. The lot line was placed in an approximate location so that the applicant would be able to close the financing on Phase 1 and commence construction. Now that Phase 2 project is in planning and design phase, the applicant has realized that the lot line will need to be moved as shown in the attached survey, which will result in Phase 1 property being reduced by ½ an acre and Phase 2 property increasing by ½ an acre. Staff has confirmed that the property line change does not affect the building setbacks in Phase 1, nor does it affect the allowable density of Phase 1, currently under construction. The current zoning allows for 11 units per acre to be constructed on both Phase 1 and Phase 2. The new acreage of Phase 1 will be 29.1 acres, allowing 320 units. The new acreage of Phase 2 will be 9.6 acres, allowing an additional 106 units. Both Phase 1 and Phase 2 are planned to be under the total allowable density for their individual parcel size. Therefore, the applicant is requesting this plat revision so that they may move forward with site planning for the Phase 2 portion.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is there someone here from LMC Riverside Holdings that would like to speak? Please come forward and give us your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Julie Sellers, 1776 Peachtree Street in Atlanta, Georgia. Dillard Sellers. Briefly, this is just I would say a minor boundary line change. The development plan for Phase 2 will be coming before council. That has not come before council yet. This is simply just trying to make sure that survey and legal description, everything is accurate, and it's basically a ½ an acre that was just sort of on the edge that really wasn't used. But as Mr. Anderson said, it doesn't impact density, setbacks, or anything like that. It's just making sure that we are accounting for the appropriate land and have the survey and plat reflect that. But happy to answer any questions that you may have, and Ray Crocker is here as well.
Ms. Sellers, I believe that Mr. Anderson has already mentioned in his memo, this does not affect in any way the density as far as allowing more density in either Phase 1 or Phase 2. It just basically aligns what's being financed with what is on paper so that the legal is correct.
That is correct. It
Okay.
does not have any development impact. It's simply just,
Okay.
where the line is slightly shifting.
The meets and bounds.
Correct.
Okay. Questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you clarify just a little bit for us where along Riverside Parkway this is? Because the maps included in our presentation are not scalable, so it's hard to really read them once you blow them up.
Yeah, Ray Crocker. It's at the intersection of Summer Lake Road and Riverside Parkway.
Yeah, I can't read any of the names on the streets, so it's hard to even tell where the route is going. Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Estes, you don't have anything? This being your area?
This is my area, and no, this makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other question or comment, then we will, if you all will come back on Tuesday, we'll take this item up. We thank you for coming. Item D, reappoint Ms. Patricia Smith to the Historic Preservation Commission for a 3-year term expiring January 31st, 2025. Ms. Jackson?
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Chelsea Jackson, 6695 Church Street. Ms. Patricia Smith is currently finishing up her 3-year term serving on the Historic Preservation Commission and wishes to be reappointed. She has been attended all the meetings, and staff recommends that she's reappointed. And there are no other individuals that would like to be reappointed to the HPC at this time.
I was going to ask if there was any reason why we would not place this on the consent agenda, even though the other representatives are not here, because I know Ms. Smith has been involved for a long, long time. And if there's no other potential candidates and she is wanting to be reappointed, unless there are other comments or questions, I would request that we do that. Okay? Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Jackson. Okay, now we'll go back to item A. It's going to take a minute to read it. So we'll get started. Consider a request under section 1205B7 to waive the time lapse requirement and allow the reapplication of the same variance. A variance to reduce the required 50-foot stream buffer in section 901E1 of the Unified Development Ordinance for a variance of 50 feet for remaining requirement of 0 feet on the north and south side of a lot, and a variance to reduce the required 75-foot stream buffer, section 9.01E2 of the Unified Development Ordinance for a variance of 75 feet for remaining requirement of 0 feet on the north and south side of lot 98.79 acres at Georgia Highway 5 and Bright Star Connector, affecting the same land or any portion thereof that was defeated by the mayor and city council within 12 months, but not less than 6 months from the last action date of July 6, 2021, for property located land lot 158, 159, 161, 162, District 2, Section 5, Parcel 31. Application by Hughes Ray Company. Mr. Ryan Anderson.
Ryan Anderson, 6701 Church Street. Section 1205B7 reads just like the item stated. You basically have to wait 12 months after the defeated item, but our UDO allows a waiver request, and the applicant is here requesting a waiver. The applicant has indicated to staff that some of the major concerns by council from the previous variance request of 6 months ago have been addressed. Some of the current concerns that council had were related to water mitigation issues, size of the flex office building, front-loaded parking, environmental impact, need for state and federal waivers, site plan design, and the substantial nature of the variance. The applicant submitted a letter on Tuesday of this week. Can I read an excerpt from that letter?
Sure you can.
Okay, all right. The applicant stated the project features multiple flex buildings along the frontage of Bright Star Connector, adding a new presence of activity to the area. The architectural design of such buildings have been carefully thought out to provide a modern yet inviting feel to the Bright Star Connector right-of-way. A generous tree line has been proposed along the road to beautify the area and strengthen the design of the buildings. Behind these structures also sit the 1.2 million warehouse distribution center that aims to support the success of the Bright Star Logistics Center directly across the street. The applicant has worked continuously with multiple government agencies, including the U.S. Corps of Engineers, Georgia Environmental Protection Division, to finalize the wetland and stream buffer impacts for the end goal of obtaining the necessary environmental permits. The applicant has already procured and purchased mitigation credits in anticipation of such permits. Close discussion and coordination with these agencies will be continued until the needed permits are received. Although similar, the revised application does feature some new details to improve the overall quality of the project and address some concerns from the original application. For instance, the footprint of the flex buildings along Bright Star Connector have been revised to further hide the warehouse building located in the back of the property. The proposed additional truck parking, originally located behind the front building, has also been removed. This allows a greater quality of tenant to occupy the new flex building, as well as decreasing future traffic flow to the 1.2 million square foot warehouse building.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Yes, come forward, Mr. Fowler.
Evening, everyone. Joe Fowler, Post Office Box 489. Let me introduce Mr. Blake Silverman on behalf of the Silverman Group, the company that has, as you know, constructed 2 buildings on the east side of Bright Star Road, north of the Bright Star Connector, one at 518,500 square feet. The second is at 336,300 square feet. That all began 2018. You may also know the Silverman Group currently has under construction a 3rd building on Highway 5 and Gurley Road, also north of the Bright Star Connector. That's approximately 500,000 square feet. Plus, at the same time, it is underway with significant off-site, large-scale sewer improvements being done by Silverman. Also here with us tonight are 4 members of the development team, Mr. Ugo Orsini, if you'd raise your hand, Ugo, and Holden Sabato is here, and then Jimmy Constantakis is here, and then Jake Rollins. Howard Ray sitting with me, of course, the design engineer on this project from the very beginning. You'll recall that in March of 2020, the council approved Silverman's request for the rezoning of approximately 111 acres between Bright Star Connector and I-20. Flex office space adjoined the connector, light industrial below the gas line that runs across the property. The DRI, of course, had already been given approval at that particular point, so after the council's zoning approval, Mr. Silverman closed on that property on October the 23rd, 2020. As would be normal, detailed engineering followed, and in the late spring or early summer of last year, it was clear that certain ages ago farming activities created drainage features on the west part of the property that triggered the setback requirements of the city's Unified Development Code. Mr. Ray made the normal application for that variance, while at or near the same time, Mr. Silverman's group submitted a similar state request. The state variance is pending, and it is now finally expected that we will receive that approval in the next 45 days. Of course, as we know, as it was mentioned by Ryan, the city denied the variance from the city's buffers, which, as you also know, simply expand the state's 25-foot requirement. And that means that any development on the site that impacts these ages ago created wet weather farming channels can't proceed. And it is that fact, of course, which brings us here. As was noted, the city's ordinance does permit Mr. Silverman to come back to the council to request reconsideration after the 6 months from the date of the denial. Absent that, as was noted, there is a 1-year waiting period before Silverman may reapply. Well, given the ordinance's structure, we're here tonight to respectfully ask the council to consider just this, getting the wheels moving to permit that reconsideration from a timing perspective. Now, for that to happen, we understand from Mr. Dodson and Ms. Woodward that you must first vote to approve reconsideration at one meeting, and then after the appropriate public notice, you'd have a second meeting at which you would look substantively at the request. So all of that rolled together brings us to make the following request. First, that at your Tuesday meeting, the council vote to approve reconsideration only. That's all you can do. But then the next nature of our request is this, that you defer all action on the variance altogether until such time as the state buffer variance is granted. At that particular point, the council would be presented with the full nature of the request. You would see in detail the changes that were mentioned a moment ago as was outlined in the letter that was read. Our belief is that this approach does the following. It expedites the necessary public meeting requirements so that rather than just waiting until the state has acted, of course, if the state acts and it's adverse, our hands are tied as to any development on that property that impacts those water features. But by simply voting to reconsider it, we've established that step number one in that process has been taken care of. Now, the reason for that is this. There's a great deal of interest in this site from a major national project. You may perhaps already know about that. And by simply voting to get us by step number one, that is, to agree to reconsider it, though deferred until after the state action has taken place, that means we are about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of the process that we would ultimately have to be. Doesn't mean that you're taking any action on Monday, or rather Tuesday, with respect to the merits of the request. It just means that we've accomplished step number one. It's a vitally important project. He closed in reliance on the rezoning. We learned later about the water features that are there. We're doing all the steps necessary, hired the right consultants for the state approval, and we ask you to please consider that vote on Tuesday. Mr. Silverman has been sort of remotely working from a distance. Of course, I've seen him here in Douglasville, but with your permission, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to speak to the city briefly about the project. Thank you for the cooperation to date, and respectfully request that you give us this first initial step and just defer that action until the state acts. Would that be all right, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, sir. That's fine. Please come forward.
Hello, good evening. Blake Silverman, 195 Morristown Road, Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Don't hold that against me.
What was that address? What was that?
195 Morristown Road, Basking Ridge, New Jersey. I said, don't hold that against me.
No problem.
So again, we just want to, number one, say thank you to the city of Douglasville. Me and the rest of my team, you guys open up your open arms 4 years ago or more, I think, to us. We've had 4 successful projects, and we look forward to working together for the 5th successful project. Again, we just want to thank everybody for your continued support of our team and welcoming you guys to your community. We appreciate our great team that we put together, and we look forward to figuring out a way to work together on our project number 5. So I just wanted to be here on behalf of my team to say thanks again, and we really enjoyed being here and working together.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Appreciate you coming in tonight. I know you've traveled obviously from New Jersey to do that, and we appreciate your attendance tonight and your information. Go ahead, Mr. Fowler.
Nothing else to offer substantively. It's a procedural issue from our perspective in order to expedite what the county, what the city rather, would ultimately have the permission to do after the state approval. That's it. Howard can address some of those other issues about what's been done to look at the site plan, some of which was actually echoed today when the parties met together. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So basically, the premise of your request is so that you can minimize the wait period should the state approve your variance, give the variance then for the wetlands.
That's right.
Basically, you just want to minimize the wait after that approval, and I think you've mentioned it would help you to the tune of 2 to 3 weeks.
That's it.
Okay, I understand. Questions, comments? Anyone? Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to say that some of my best friends are from New Jersey, so.
I told him he probably needed to have an interpreter, but nobody took me up on that.
That's the reason I asked for the state again. I could not make it out, and I'm sorry. You probably have the same issue with me.
And it took all of my willpower not to ask you which exit, so I didn't. You did discuss recently the change. I'd like to hear some more clarification on what this version of what's made this version of the project better, new and improved, and better for your personality and your teeth and all that stuff versus the last one.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, just as far as the essence of time, I believe the request that we have before us, though, has not had anything, or does not at this moment have any reason to be discussed until we agree or disagree to give them to be looked at again. Now, if you would like to hear that and we have the time, that's fine. If
Mr. Ray can be brief about that, if you're willing to do that.
I'll honor that request. Mr. Howard, Mr. Howard Ray, can you be brief with that, please?
To be honest, no, but I'll try.
We're going to time you.
It's only the national championship tonight or something.
There's no national championship or anything like that tonight, and Howard would probably keep us late if
I'll say congratulations as much as it pains me to you Georgia fans. How about that?
Then we'll allow you to speak then.
I'm proud of you. Howard Ray, HRC Engineer, 6554 Church Street. Just real quick, basically the big thing I would say is along the frontage of Bright Star connector. Best I remember, we had 4, maybe 5 buildings. There were 2-story in the original submittal that I think totaled about 65,000 square foot, if I had to guess. Now we're in the neighborhood of 200,000 square foot, so the majority of the frontage is now building. There was a comment made relative to parking. I think the exact one was, wow, that's a lot of parking. Can we do a parking day? So with that change, obviously the buildings, we've reduced the parking, plus we've provided more of a shield to that parking up along the connector. Another comment was relative to screening or sight lines off I-20. So we've reduced some parking in the back to be able to create a more of a natural buffer. We'll have planting buffers or plantings on our slopes and so forth. Because as I'm sure you're familiar, that section of the interstate's got about 60, 70-foot difference in elevation from one end to the other. So we're trying to address that by providing more of those trees along that corridor to stay. I think the minimum width of undisturbed is like around 20 feet or so. I'm looking at a very small drawing, so I don't know an exact, but trying to even see if we can stretch that further. You know, that's the majority of it, is really along the connector. That's where you'll see the biggest impact. Okay. But, you know, just to talk to what Joe was saying, you know, the biggest thing is we're just trying to match up timing, you know, because we think that there's a good chance if we have that 15 to 45 day advertisement period, we should have it in hand and be able to meet that meeting, and if not, we just catch the next one. But versus waiting, we're going to lose that 45 days.
I do remember that one of the biggest concerns that council had in the last presentation was, you know, this is the gateway into Douglasville from the west on the interstate, and the first thing would be, we might be seeing is the back end of a warehouse.
Yes.
And that was a concern. So that, as long as that has, one of the issues has been addressed. Okay.
Yeah, I think Howard was the one that brought it up, and as you know, I think he'd be very pleased with where we're headed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Others?
He did keep that brief. That was very good.
Thank you, Mr. Howard Wright.
I'm an architect.
Anyone else? Anyone else have any comment or question? Thank you all. We appreciate you coming in. We appreciate the time spent, and we will take this up on Tuesday then to consider request for the shortening of that waiting period.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And that's all that we have, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, under the Planning and Development Committee tonight. And we appreciate your help.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that. And moving right along to the Public Improvement and Beautification Committee, and that will be handled tonight by the Vice Chair, Councilman Adams. It's your night.
Now, wait a minute. Okay, Public Improvement and Beautification Committee. Reappoint Matt Ducharme as Post 2, member of the Douglasville Tree Advisory Board to serve a 4-year term, expiring January 1, 2025. Ms. Jackson?
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Chelsea Jackson, 6695 Church Street. Mr. Matt Ducharme is currently finishing up his first term on the Douglasville Tree Advisory Board and wishes to be reappointed. He's very active on the Tree Advisory Board, and staff recommends the reappointment. And he's the only individual that's interested in being reappointed to this post at this time.
So there is no one else that has requested to be considered, and he does want to be reappointed.
That is correct.
Consent agenda, ladies and gentlemen, any question or comment? Thank you very much. Next, item B, reappoint Scott Daniel as Post 3, member of the Douglasville Tree Advisory Board to serve a 4-year term expiring January 1, 2026.
Thank you. Chelsea Jackson, 6695 Church Street. Again, same for Mr. Scott Daniel. He's finishing up his first term on the Tree Advisory Board, serving Post 3. He would like to be reappointed. Staff does recommend his approval, and no one else would like to be voted on or to be appointed to this position at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. I'll ask the same question then of council. We'd like to place that on the consent agenda for Tuesday. Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. That's all that we have tonight under Public Improvement and Beautification.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next committee is the Public Relations Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Howard Estes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We have no business this evening.
Thank you, Councilman. Next committee is the Public Safety Committee, that's chaired by Councilman Sam Davis.
Yes, sir, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd like to say, Mr. Mayor, okay. Item A, hold a public hearing to consider a request for the change in agent outlet manager for the alcoholic beverage license for the retail package sale of wine and malt beverage at the following establishment. Current licensee Kroger Company, DBA Kroger 485, location 3875 Chapel Road. Current agent outlet manager Michael Biggs, proposed agent outlet manager James Fowler. Required fees have been paid into the financial department. With the applicant, please come down and state your name and address for our record, please, sir.
Yeah, James Follier, 3875 Chapel Hill Road, Kroger.
Thank you, Ms. Follier, for coming out. And I really appreciate everything that you all do there. And how do you go about training your employees of alcohol and tobacco sales?
So they have initial training when they're hired before they can even get on a register. And then we also have basically yearly follow-up training With every associate, they have to basically get recertified every year.
Okay. Questions from the council, please. Starting with Mayor Pro Tem.
I have none, but I believe Mr. Adams does.
Councilman Adams?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you presently a part of the team at that Kroger on Chapel Hill Road?
Yes.
So you're just rotating into the manager of that particular department?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you had any experience with alcohol sales in other stores with Kroger?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you do understand the ordinances of the city, what is expected and what is required?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? At this time, sir, we have to hold a public hearing. And it's 5 minutes for those who speak against your license and 5 minutes to speak for your license. So right now, we are gonna open up the floor for those who wanna speak for the license here at Kroger. Since there are no takers, and now I'm gonna open up the floor for 5 minutes for those who speak against. Since we have no takers, we'll close the public hearing and come back on Tuesday, and we'll give you an answer. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilman Davis. Next committee is Recreation, Culture, and Tourism, and that's chaired by Councilman Chris Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. We have no business tonight in Recreation, Culture, and Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next committee is the Technology Committee, and I'll ask the Vice Chair, Councilman Estes, to take that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. No business this evening under the Technology Committee.
Thank you, Councilman Estes. The next committee is Transportation Committee, and that will be under the ranking member, Councilman Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. We have one item tonight under Transportation. Authorize the road closures and detours around Timber Ridge Road for the Harmony at Douglasville Assisted Living Facility Development, requested by Ray Lynn and Associates Incorporated. Mr. Greg Roberts is going to explain that need to us.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. Again, my name is Greg Roberts, Director of Public Services, 6695 Church Street, mainly because I cannot ever remember the address to my office, but you can find me there. Somebody will track me down. This is really a revisit of something that we did about two and a half months ago, if you recall, in probably mid-October, where Ray Lynn made the same request, and we did close the roadway at that time. Unfortunately, when their materials got on the property, the pipe was inspected, and it did not meet the minimum specifications for the materials that were on the site. And I'm not able to speak completely to what happened there, but I do think it has a lot to do, from what I've been told by Ray Lynn, has a lot to do with having trouble getting equipment. If you remember, that was the reason they came to us so late, right on top of the holiday at that time, because they were having trouble getting the materials. And so once those materials were delivered, again, it was not the materials that are acceptable for the project. They have the materials for the project ready to roll. They had wanted to start this coming Monday, but at the time they reached back out to me, this was the soonest that we could come to you guys and talk to you about it. So as you can see, they're wanting to do this project starting on Monday week, January 24th, which is incidentally my birthday. And
subtle.
Thank you, Ms. Hampton. And they're asking for the time period of 1/24 through February 18th, with the expectation that hopefully it can be completed as much as a week earlier than that, hopefully, if weather cooperates.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts, and happy birthday on the 24th.
Thank you.
Any question or comment concerning this item for council? Okay. I won't request that just because the others are not here, and this is an item that they may have questions about, so we will take that up on Tuesday for a vote, and we thank you very much, sir, for bringing it to us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, that's all that we have tonight under transportation.
Thank you, Councilman Adams. So that is the final committee. Is there any other business that will come before City Council at this time? Any member of council? Okay. All right. Now, Updates from city staff, starting, City Attorney, Mr. Dotson, do we have anything?
No business.
Thank you, Mr. Dotson. Staff Attorney Lynn Woodward.
No business, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Ms. Woodward. Representing the police tonight, Captain Stafford, do you have anything for us?
No business, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Captain. City Manager's Office, Marcia Hampton.
Just to remind you that City Hall offices will be closed on Monday in observance of Martin Luther King Day Jr. birthday. So we will see you all on Tuesday.
That is a reminder that do not show up here on Monday for council meeting. We come on Tuesday. So you'll find an empty building. All right. Do we have any comments from citizens or delegates? Anybody who's out there who waited and would like to talk? I do not see anyone coming forward at this time. Or any other information or issues coming before council? If not, this meeting is adjourned.
For all those items, that's pretty good.